Good evening, everybody, and good evening, Paul. We're back. Game week 3 concludes this evening with Manchester United versus Liverpool. How has your Sky weekend been, Paul?
A lot better than what it has been over the last few weeks. Picked up quite a good returns on Saturday in particular, and avoided a couple of the big pitfalls yesterday. I think in terms of Ake and Koulibaly, quite a few people on Twitter were making transfers yesterday, and those two were popular players for similar reasons, really. Big defenders from big teams. Been racking in the points recently. Good upcoming fixtures for them both as well. So yeah, I've managed to avoid that, pick up good points on Saturday, and I've still got 3 players to play tonight as well. So good rank rise.
Lovely job. Yeah, much to say with my. I don't think I scored quite as much as you. I was happy I scored 85 points, which for me was really good. Saliba, obviously, very unexpected goal there. Dyer, I'm glad I've got Dyer. I think he's going to be a good one to have moving forward. Had Romero, was contemplating taking him out, but I saw some mixed reports because initially it was like 3 to 4 weeks out, and if that is the case, he'd be an automatic sub out. But then I saw reports that he was trying to make himself available for the Wolves game, which obviously made me think that it's not that bad. So he should be back maybe next week.
Yep.
But I had a decision to make, probably the same as a lot of managers watching, listening just now on what to do, and I feel quite fortunate in a way because I did Kane to Haaland yesterday, which left me with 0.2 in the bank. So 8 million was obviously a natural upgrade to Ake, but I wasn't sure about Ake's minutes because Laporte is due to be back in a couple of weeks. But if I'd have had 8.2, I may have gone to Cucurella, for example, or may have moved him on. But obviously, as it transpired, I was pretty happy. I just kind of waited it out because it gives me weeks more information. The enablers banged, didn't they? Who would have thought that Norgard, Paulinho and Brennan Johnson would all have bagged? Absolutely unbelievable. So I had Paulinho and Johnson. So yeah, really happy actually. You've used 2 transfers in total, 3 to play this evening as well. So yeah, it's probably the only game I'm actually doing okay in because all the others I'm a bit of a pasting, but yeah, good stuff. Welcome.
Paulinho definitely looks like the budget enabler of choice, doesn't he? It's another 9-point return, picked up tackling bonus, and has obviously got this outside chance of picking up goals now as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because on the Tuesday the 30th, where not many people are going to have captains, he's guaranteed to play in that one. Just wondering whether, I know it's a big hop-on point for like a Chelsea defender, but I'm wondering whether it's worth just maybe hanging on to him because potentially by the following week, Fofana could be in at 7.5 or 7.4. I want to say, is it worth waiting? I'm sure we'll talk about that in a bit. Good evening, everyone in the chat. Manchester crashed out on the sofa with gastroenteritis. Any entertainment is most welcome. I feel sorry for you. It's not the nicest feeling to have. Have you had that, Paul?
No.
Oh, it hurts. It's horrible. You just feel empty, absolutely empty. Sam D. Taylor is in. Gordon Hamilton, John Acornley, Daniel Barnes, FPL Sparta scored 82 with Salah captain left this evening. Mark Williamson, Dan Cox, is anyone not on Salah tonight? He says, good evening, Paul and Fergie. Get it up, the peer review, he says. Mark Daniels, Matt Woolley Hornet, and everyone else. Absolutely brilliant to have you in. Just a quick run check. Daniel Barnes just asked around subs used. Some interesting numbers here. We got 5, 5, 3, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 5. So in between the 2 and 5 there, the average. Interesting numbers. It'll be interesting when Sky start posting the average transfer remaining, won't it? But yeah, good stuff. If you are listening or watching and you haven't subscribed, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. So, Paul, what are we going to look at today?
I was just going to talk about some of the popular moves that happened at the weekend. Some of my own moves. This ties in with some of the questions that we've received as well. And then upcoming transfer strategies and how I think that the template will or even the perceived template will start dissolving after after next midweek.
Oh, that's exciting. That's exciting. Firstly, just a quick look. Sorry, at the total points for the weekend. Saliba top 17 points there. Odegaard 16. That was a bit unexpected. Paul, do you think?
Have you been watching All or Nothing?
I haven't. No.
But it's been shown. It shows you the highlights. Like Odegaard was always making those deep runs into the box last season, and there was a couple of first couple of games this season where he was making the run, but then I don't know, didn't shoot when he had the chance to shoot. I've only been paying attention to him because I own him in Dream Team. So, but yeah, I thought he could do well. 8.2. It's probably been priced about fairly, I would say. I think it was similar price to Martinelli, isn't it?
A couple more interesting ones for me. Zaha is starting to look really good option, sort of like an out of position forward as a midfielder. And their fixtures do turn soon. Go on.
I've just told myself never again on Zaha, but I've told myself more than that. I've told myself that more than once. So
I really like him as an option moving forward. I really do. Obviously, look at captaincy. We look when the fixtures turn, because their first few weren't very nice. But I'm just having a look actually on that Tuesday, the 30th again. They're home to Brentford. Would be a bad captaincy shout there, for example. And the Leeds boys, Leeds flying. Harrison and Rodrigo in particular. I think I saw earlier that Rodrigo is he the highest score in the game at the moment, or not? Or not far. I think he's got like 30 points overall, which is pretty insane. And obviously Leeds play on that day as well, on that Tuesday. Meslier banged in an 11-pointer. Mitrovic on fire, 7.7 million, scores again, superb again. And Haaland 10 for those who brought him in yesterday. For those who follow me on FPL, Miguel Almiron, absolute legends, 10-pointer. Any kind of takeaways from the weekend at all, Paul?
Well, I think you and I spoke briefly before we came on air, and you had pitched the idea of maybe not needing the Chelsea defender for the captaincy a week tomorrow as on a Tuesday night, and perhaps Rodrigo from Leeds could be the one. There always seems to be one really good budget forward that does well in every season, and perhaps he is the one this season. Leeds have got the fixtures as well. Back up, they've got a single captaincy against Nottingham Forest coming up. Yeah,
and definitely thinking of probably going against the template, but that's not because to go against the template, because I think a Chelsea defender has probably got like a bit of a limited ceiling, whereas someone like a Rodrigo, even a Zaha, will play quite a few games in a short amount of time, and they're just on form. And there's this whole thing about Fofana, as I say, it'll be interesting chat when we get to that day there. So yeah, you mentioned around Ake and Koulibaly. What did you make of the transfer dealings on the weekend?
If you had the budget and you were moving off Romero to Koulibaly, that's an upgrade of like 1.5 million. But I assume that's the way you were going. I mean, I just think you've got to count yourself unlucky in that position, because you weren't necessarily doing it for that one game. And I had seen a few people who captained them, but the majority of people captained the Man City asset yesterday was Cancelo or Haaland or De Bruyne. So, I think you just got to count yourself unlucky. And I certainly wouldn't be trying to do anything mad like correcting that move immediately. I know he's suspended for one game now, but the game that you really wanted him for the captaincy would be on the Tuesday night away to Southampton anyway. So I'd hold him if that was the case. He does look a bit more rash than when people were comparing him to Rudiger, but he does look a bit more rash, like he's willing to go in and try and win the ball at any means, or because he's caught out of position to, like, well, you've seen both of them were kind of like tugs, weren't they, for his two like more cynical kind of fouls as opposed to a late tackle or anything like that. Definitely want to watch. I'll be interested in what Tuchel does with the Chelsea defence in the coming weeks. Reece James at right centre back's kind of a waste of his attacking talents, and I don't know what Trevor Chalobah needs to do to get a game, because every time he played last season he looked assured. But he seems nowhere near that starting 11 now. As Pilaqueta will probably come back in. So does that even mean Cucurella's minutes will be numbered, even if it's not Chilwell and Cucurella? I mean, I think he might play on the left of the back three next week if I was guessing, because of Koulibaly being out as well. But yeah, I would hold Koulibaly if I brought him in, and I think the Ake one's unlucky as well. You're gambling on him playing yesterday. He started, and perhaps even with the games coming thick and fast next weekend, you think that you might have got a bit of longevity out of that transfer before then moving him on. Again, so I think you've got to feel a little bit unlucky from making that move.
Yeah, definitely. It's as a non-owner, I was watching it and obviously just so immensely pleased, because I was obviously tempted to have a bit of a shift around, maybe put in Ake himself, maybe have a shift around to go to Koulibaly or go to a Chelsea defender. But yeah, I was really feeling it. We've all been there, haven't we, where we brought in a player like that and it hasn't worked out immediately. And you just think, what a waste. But there's nothing you can do. You will have these in season, and yeah, as you say, the key is just not to panic, and wait for the news. You never know, right? Ake might be fit for next week. You never know. And the next two fixtures, home to Palace, home to Forest, are probably about as good as they get from a defensive perspective. So you never know.
If Ake is out for a couple of weeks, I'd be tempted to move him on. Again, set up kind of what your overall team would be on paper and make a move towards that, whether it's downgrading to free up cash elsewhere, or if you can make a direct replacement to somebody that you want to get in, then I'd probably move Ake on if he's out for at least a couple of weeks. Koulibaly, I think I would just hold at the moment.
Stuff. And that answers a lot of the questions we've had in, actually. So thanks for that, Paul. Next, you just wanted to have a brief look at your own team and have a chat.
Yeah, so I made a couple of moves yesterday, didn't pay off immediately. I did avoid Ake and Koulibaly, so I feel quite lucky in that sense. But we were talking last week about that tactic that I used to do with set up your overall team and how many moves are you away from it. And you're at the start of the season, so that changes week on week just now. But I was quite happy with my moves. So those that did make moves and were lucky enough not to get any injuries, but perhaps the players didn't return, as long as it was part of a long-term strategy, I wouldn't worry too much about it and just continue on. You weren't making a move for a single game day anyway in those instances. So whilst the transfers didn't pay off immediately, I'm not too disheartened by it. And if I was to write down my overall team now, I think I'm only two positions away from it. So like Ian Parron had asked the question, if I was to make it now, how many moves would I be away? Yesterday I would have been 4, and now I'm 2 from making those moves. So I only picked up a few points, but pretty happy with things.
You've got the Brighton mid Casado on screen. Assuming he's one of the moves, and are you going for a double sort of midfield enabler strategy?
Yeah, there's just a lot of value in there at present. Like we talked about Paulinho, who I think is the best in that position. His stats did warrant it last season as well, albeit it was in the Portuguese top flight. And how does that transition across to English football? It's a question. But there's other players that I think, with the volume of players around that price bracket this season, that if it doesn't work out, I could, like Gibbs White. Forest aren't going to pay that much money for someone to not play them, so I could easily move there, and they play in the game days after that Casado does. So I know there's transfer rumours around Casado from Man United and from Liverpool. I mean, if he moved there and played for one of those teams, excellent, right? But if he lost his place, or like other players currently, if that means he's going to be out the Brighton team for a while there's unrest, then I don't want to really waste a transfer in that bracket, but if I have to, there is players that I can go to. So I'm pretty happy with the way things are.
In terms of transfer strategy and kind of making moves and things this year, are you going to try and play it so you have your captains in place early, or are you going to kind of wait more for the actual day? Because obviously it's kind of unprecedented, the number of transfers we've got, etc. What's your current thinking around those?
So I've looked at the next 4 game weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and I mapped out who I thought was going to be the best captain option on each of those game weeks, and I factored that into the overhaul team
Okay,
that I would
cool.
pick if I was doing it just now. So, as I say, those moves have allowed me to move towards that as well. And whilst I actually wanted Koulibaly, I couldn't afford them in the way that my overhaul team was going to pan out. So I gain a bit of fortune there for me, because I could have brought him in yesterday under the budget, but I knew that I couldn't. Like, if you use Ian Parron's planner, you can work out where your budget is for future moves, and when you've brought in a player that's more expensive, do I have the budget to do that after I've made 2 or 3 moves down the line? So, that was a reason I didn't go for him as well, even though I thought that he was a better player than one of the players I brought in. Certainly on that captaincy on the Tuesday night, I'd say that was the one game where I didn't have the captain that I would have wanted. Other than that, I've covered that off for the next 4 weeks.
Cool.
That's my own strategy. It's worked in the past. I can see flaws in it. Perhaps I'm thinking a bit too far. Like, perhaps I'm thinking a bit too far ahead. And a few things we learned over the season or two ago, more season or so past, is that more information is better. I know that you held off on your moves this week, and I like that stance out as well, using the transfers further down the line. So it's just getting that blend of meeting somewhere in the middle, I think.
Yeah, I think my strategy is going to be a lot more waiting until the day, and it's not just because of injuries, right? Kind of injuries are the obvious one, or injuries or suspensions or things like that. But I do think this year things like form, for example. So you just mentioned like the Leeds players. Now in our starting 11s, we would never have envisaged. Well, I say never. We're probably very unlikely to have envisaged, even potentially thinking about someone like Zaha or a Leeds player or someone like that for captaincy ahead of a Chelsea defender, just for example. But I do think things move quickly, and if we can adapt, we can jump on bandwagons. And I don't mean a bandwagon as in just because everyone's doing it, do it yourself. I mean, if something is actually happening, like Leeds attack. I think someone in the chat earlier said Rodrigo's on 34 points, which is nearly 12 points a game, which is insane. And in that on that Tuesday the 30th, they're home to Everton, who obviously have been incredibly poor. They're then away to Brentford and home to Forest in a single day captaincy on Monday the 12th. I probably wouldn't look to bring in Rodrigo unless I would captain him on the Tuesday in kind of lieu of the following Monday. But I think that's something I've done previously. But I do think this form thing is sometimes overlooked. It's not just about covering a captaincy. We've all, a few of us have got like Brennan Johnson, just for example, at the moment, Forest against Leeds. The way that things are panning out currently at this moment, like I know he scored and he had a goal disallowed last week, but probably not as exciting prospect as we hoped he'd be. Obviously, Henderson looks really good from a save perspective, but if Henderson's looking really good from a save perspective, probably means that everyone who's playing against him is having lots of shots, which means that Rodrigo or kind of whoever has a chance of that. So I think that's going to be my strategy. Is I'm not planning on bringing anyone in before the day. And I think yesterday, like I say, I wouldn't have captained him yesterday. I brought Haaland in yesterday for the captaincy. But I think yesterday would have been a day I would have definitely tried to think ahead and maybe gone for a Chelsea defender in advance. Whereas looking at how they played yesterday, we get to look at them again on the weekends before we have to decide on the captaincy on the day. So I think that's just, how I'm gonna play it.
So Rodrigo is the top scorer in the game with 34. Do you know who's second top scorer in the game? A high owned player.
A highly owned player. Saliba?
Haaland.
Is he really?
Which I was quite surprised about as well.
That, yeah.
He's only 5 points behind on 29.
Wow, blimey. Okay, interesting there. What's Saliba on of interest? He must be on a few now, is he?
Well, he got the minus points
of course
last week, didn't he? So He's on 23. He's on 23, which for a £7.4 million defender's is good.
Any knee jerkers would have been stuck taking out Salah after 1-1, wouldn't they? So we've got Kane and Haaland on screen. There was some interesting quotes from Pep yesterday. I'm sure you've heard them, Paul, saying that when Man City start to play twice in 3 days, which starts as early as next week, because even after next week, they've got Champions League then every week, for quite a while, then Haaland basically will not play every game and Alvarez is going to play. Does that kind of play into your thinking for the coming weeks?
I guess it depends on whether the popular move next week's just going to be Haaland plays on Saturday and then move back to Kane for the Sunday, and he'll be the most popular captain option on Sunday again. It will be interesting when that midweek comes up, because you've got on the Wednesday you've got Salah, Jesus, Haaland, and Kane all playing. So I think that Haaland to Kane move back, the hokey cokey as we call it, will be very, very popular. But I just feel that's, especially if Liverpool weren't to keep a clean sheet in their next two games, so against Man United tonight and then against I think it's Bournemouth that they've got at home on Saturday. Could you see like a lot of change there and people moving off the Liverpool defence? I think gaining the extra fixture, I could see that being popular. I think that whilst there was a template before, I think people are starting to break that up slightly. And in the Romero news, there was various different options that people could move him on to. A few did Cucurella, a few did Caicedo, a few moved to Ake, a few held. So even that one player has caused changes to what I perceived as a template before as well. Will people go back to Romero? You don't get to see the Spurs lineup on Sunday, because I could see people knee-jerking back and moving back onto him if they knew he was starting then as well.
I'm just looking at their fixtures as well, Spurs, actually. So they play away to Forest, away to West Ham, home to Fulham. They're probably 3 decent fixtures. After that, they're away to Man City. Then they're home to Leicester, which is going to be a tough one from a defensive view. Away to Arsenal, the way Arsenal play, that's going to be tough. And then away to Brighton, and Brighton are playing really well too. So those next 4 games after the next 3 are really tough games from a defensive perspective. I still fancy Spurs to score, but I think defensively, I can't see Spurs knocking the ball around against those 4 teams, getting loads of passes and keep loads of clean sheets. So if you have taken Romero out, I think long term is probably okay. I wouldn't look to be bringing him back anytime soon. I think after that, then they go home to Everton and have a nice run, but I think it's all right. And just in terms of anything else on kind of transfer strategy, Paul, over the next the coming weeks, any popular moves? You mentioned like the Chelsea defender, Haaland to Kane.
Yeah, well, and I guess if you aren't worried about Pep's comments on Haaland and you want to stop the use of transferring Haaland to Kane to Haaland and back again, I guess there is an argument to transition back towards a premium strike force. There's a lot of value in the mid-price and defence just now as well. So it's another option and another way that the template could get broken as well.
I was going to ask about that, because there's couple of days, isn't there? Well, starting this week. No, it's not this week. You say on that Wednesday, when City, Liverpool, and Spurs all play. They also all play on Saturday the 3rd of September, and they also all play at home on Saturday the 10th of December as well. In terms of like an argument to get to those 3 to stop, stop using transfers, I think there's an argument for that.
Yeah, and if you were thinking about doing that, lay out what your overall team would look like with those players in it, and how do you transition the players that you've got by gaining an extra game here or an extra game there, or dropping one out, if that's the way that you want to play it. If you want to play the high ownership and you think there's value elsewhere, but you do need to be careful in those mid-price defenders like Ake. Will Cucurella play all the games? Like, I think Saliba, if he keeps his place in that Everton team, Arsenal team, which there's no reason why he shouldn't, at 7.4 million, maybe he's the best, along with Paulinho, maybe he's the best budget enabler, even though he's maybe not as cheap as what we usually look for under that bracket.
There's a tough balance as well, isn't there? Because, you just mentioned Haaland has scored, was it 30 odd points?
29, yeah, 29.
Kane scored a couple of goals as well. Salah's got a goal in the assist. He's also playing this evening. So all three of those players you would probably expect to be, averaging not far off 9 to 10 points a game, regardless of who they play. And then there's the thing around maybe hold on to someone like Brennan Johnson for the captaincy. And this is what I mean about the captaincy's kind of overly affecting your decision making elsewhere in your team. You could hold on to Brennan Johnson, who is not a prolific Premier League goal scorer, right? Playing for a prolific Premier League team. Whereas Johnson, you could save you wherever you're 0.6 or 0.7 by over somewhere else to really beef up that team. And that's, I suppose, that's the point I was trying to make earlier around holding on to players. I've used Johnson as an example, right? But it could be for anyone. If you're holding on to someone for a captaincy in like October, which I know has been kind of mooted before, but actually it could cost you 40, 50 points, because if you haven't got those premium three and they all go off, you haven't got them, because they will score goals, right? Whereas the other's not guaranteed. It could cost you in the long run. Even if you hit your captaincy in October, you could already be 40 points down because you've held on to him. So I think thinking about it, I'm a bit concerned about not holding all three. And but I think Fofana for me, and I know I've mentioned a couple of times already, but I think for me he may be the key, because it looks like Saliba is going to keep his place. And my thinking all along was maybe Saliba to Fofana because they're like roughly the same price, but maybe even off, like a hop off from. I mentioned Spurs fixtures go a bit tough soon. Dyer to Fofana, for example, could release like $1 million, and maybe, I don't know, Brennan Johnson to Casado or Kamara, and that gives me the money then to be able to get to that 4-3-3, 4-3-3 or 4-4-2 with those premium players. So that's something I'm kind of toying with at the moment. I haven't plotted anything out yet, and obviously.
We've not talked about Son as well, and I think that whilst his form hasn't been particularly great and he has been hooked early in a couple of games, there's going to be a spell at some point where Son gets like back-to-back doubles and like someone of that talent and that style of play that he's got and the style of the team's play as well, that he's not going to not do well at some stage as well. That would be instead of Kane if you were building a like kind of 4-4-2, you needed budget, etc. Kane's the obvious choice just now.
I think as well though, if you've got like 5 at the back, because I was playing around with this at the start, if you had 5 at the back, you're almost, for me anyway, almost forced to go for Kane ahead of Son, because obviously you can't go 5-4-1, can you? And that's why I've ended up going with Kane, which has been quite fortunate in both captaincy days, because I would have been tempted to go for Son if I could have had a 5-4-1, if that makes sense. So I think I've been quite fortunate, but I think Kane holds the advantage because you have to have 2 up front in that formation, don't you? Interesting stuff. And we haven't even talked yet about trying to squeeze in a Leicester player for their 2 captaincy days either, but we'll do that when we come to the preview now. So preview for game week 4. Obviously, there's the match this evening. We have had a few questions around maybe what to do with, I don't know, maybe Ake or maybe Koulibaly, or if you haven't got anyone for this evening. How do you think this evening is going to play out, Paul? Probably on the diciest of games you could ever call, because you wouldn't be surprised with any result, really, would you?
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite tight.
You?
I think so, yeah. I think Liverpool might win like 2-1 or something like that. I've got this impending fear of, I've got Liverpool defenders in every format, so I've just got this thing that they're going to concede, and I know that's not the rational, data-driven, analytic way that I should be thinking about it.
That's the Scottish pessimist in you.
I Yeah, I think Man United's going to be up for it.
Yeah,
I
agree
see
with that.
maybe a 1-0 draw or a 2-1 victory for Liverpool or such like. There's not, I mean, there's not much value in making those moves. Perhaps like Joe Gomez, if you thought that was going to Liverpool, if you thought that he was going to come in and then keep his place and maybe move an Ake to him. As I say, I wouldn't move Koulibaly to anybody. That would potentially be one move that you could make.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't. Yeah. I think as long as you, well, assuming most people have got Salah captain or Van Dijk captain, I probably wouldn't look to make any kind of additional moves. Diaz is an interesting one. I thought he looked really good. Last game they had the red card, but he's obviously really awkward sort of price point. But yeah, I will be going mad.
10.1. It's just too expensive for
It
me
is,
in this game in that position.
especially when Van Dijk is 10.3 or
7.
10.7. Yeah, it's just not worth it, is it? But, okay, moving on to Saturday. Southampton against Man United, Brentford, Everton, Brighton, Leeds, Chelsea, Leicester, Liverpool, Bournemouth, Man United, Palace, and Arsenal, Fulham. Pick a captain on that Saturday, Paul, because there's 3 massive options there in Salah, Haaland, and Jesus. You would guess. What's your thinking on the Saturday?
I'll see what Salah looks like tonight. If given free rein and pick a captain from there, I think I'd pick Salah. With it being a midfielder as well, get an extra point for a goal. I think I'd pick him, but I wouldn't put anyone off captaining Cancelo, Van Dijk, Jesus, Haaland. Like any of those 5 could easily outscore the other, and are all good options as well, I think. But yeah, for me, if Salah does at least even okay tonight, I think he'll be my choice. It helps with Liverpool's forward issues in terms of availability and fitness as well. If they had Jota and Nunez fit as well, then I guess there's a slight rotation. There could have been a slight rotation risk for Salah on Saturday with them playing again midweek after it. But with that out of the way, and every game is like a must-win for Liverpool just now with them. Well, they're only 2 points behind. If they win tonight, they're only.
If they win tonight, oh sorry, go on.
If they win tonight, they're only 2 points behind Man City anyway. When people were saying that the league was over after drawing their first 2 games, so every game's kind of a must-win for them.
Absolutely.
So, yeah,
I completely agree. And then Sunday the 28th, so Wolves, Newcastle. Newcastle looked very good. I thought they were superb yesterday. They played a lot more open than I thought, which I think Liverpool played Newcastle in a couple of weeks' time. On a week Wednesday. And I think that while it's great Newcastle playing like that, and I thought they were superb, I do think it'll play into, teams like Liverpool and Spurs maybe play into their hands a little bit, those who are absolute experts for hitting on the break. So I think they'll concede a few goals, but they also look sensational going forward. And St. Maximin, I mean, how he hasn't been snapped up by a Champions League club is beyond me, because he is, every time he gets the ball, he is electric. His feet, his pace, he's absolutely unreal. Villa play West Ham. Not too much excitement going on there. Both of those teams in the doldrums. Bit of a relegation 6 points of that one at the moment. And then Forest and Spurs. So as you mentioned earlier, the natural sort of pick would be potentially Haaland to Kane. Anything else here? Any other captaincy options or any other transfers to make some gains?
I just think that's that Kane that sticks out as the obvious captain on that day, and I think they'll give up possession. So Dyer, I wouldn't go against Kane, but if you really didn't want to use a transfer and you already held Dyer, then maybe captain Dyer. But Wolves, I thought, played really, really well against Spurs on Saturday past. So I really like. I've said this to you before, and I know I've I probably said this last week actually. I know I've slagged you for picking Callum Wilson in certain situations in the past, but I do. If he stays fit, I think he's a fantastic player and will score 15 what would be your kind of mid to European chasing slots? If your striker gets you 15 goals a season, is a good season for them. And I think if Wilson stayed fit, he would definitely get 50 goals a season. Which maybe it's just not like I just wouldn't want to go against Kane knowing that Newcastle's fixture wasn't particularly great.
So if you did that move on Sunday the 28th, it means you would be going into Wednesday the 31st with Kane and Salah, probably, but not with Haaland against Forest, with no easy way to get there unless obviously you planned for it. Is that something you're kind of willing to go with? Because Haaland to Forest is probably the captaincy pick on that day, right? On the Wednesday.
But this is where a gamble could come in handy, because if Haaland plays against Palace on Saturday, Pep's quotes have suggested that Haaland might not play 2 times a week, so you could be gambling against that. And if you rocked up and you really didn't want to captain Kane against West Ham and you already held Cancelo, was there an argument that Cancelo would be a good captain at home to Nottingham Forest, perhaps?
Yeah, it's a really tough one. It's one which I haven't given a great deal of thought to yet. But like I said, I'm pretty keen to maybe get the 3 of them. So I'm gonna have to put some real thought in next week. Have a look how they look again on the weekend. And things like injuries and stuff, right? This is why I don't like to make moves until I absolutely have to, because you never know what's going to happen. If Haaland gets a knock on the weekend, there's no way he's playing on that Wednesday, even if it's like a minor knock. There's no way he's playing that Wednesday with another game kind of 3 days later. And Pep's already, he's already mentioned, Emily, about Haaland's fitness. He's slowly getting there. That doesn't sound like the confidence of someone who's going to play 90. So, yeah, it's a tough one. And that Spurs West Ham game, that's an interesting one, because Spurs West Ham on paper, if it was last year, I'd have thought that would be a really tough game for Spurs. But the way both teams have played, I know Spurs haven't looked amazing, but West Ham have looked pretty awful. Very, very average at the moment. So it's probably a more attractive game than it would have been, if you'd have looked at it at the start of the season. Like Kane away to West Ham, guaranteed to play against a team out of form, or Man City against Forest, as you say, Haaland is very unlikely to play 90 minutes. He may not even start. It's a real conundrum there. And as you say, those gambling could be really rewarded. You get to see all the lineups, which is something. So you're not going in blind, because that would hurt. But yeah, you want to save yourself half an hour of your evening there if you are unsure still, because the lineups could make a decision for you or could force you into a corner, which will be interesting.
I'm gonna walk my dog for the half hour before and leave my phone in the house, so I can't be tempted to do something rash at the last minute.
I can just imagine you though, Paul. You say that, and then you go out for a walk, and then my next vision is just you and the dog just hurtling back like this, because you're like, I got it. I've just got to do it. I've got to do it.
I did it with that that Newcastle Everton game last season, where I was really contemplating bringing Ryan Fraser in, and I was like, saw the team sheets before I left the house, and I was like, right, I've decided I'm definitely not doing it. Phone down, took the dog out. So I'm just yeah.
I'm not sure. I can just imagine you doing that, like Forrest Gump run, when you realise I've just got to do it, and you just get it in your head and you've got to run back. We'll have a quick look at next week. Obviously, we will be back next Monday, so we'll be able to talk in a bit more detail. But Tuesday the 30th, Fulham play Brighton, Palace and Brentford, Southampton, Chelsea, Leeds and Everton. Tough day for captaincy. Chelsea defender's been the one kind of mooted as a good entry point here. Like I say, I may be tempted to look elsewhere potentially. I do like Brighton's fixtures as well, though. I was looking at the prices of Gross and Welbeck. They both returned on the weekend, but Zaha and Rodrigo are two that are interesting me. You think on that Tuesday?
Yeah, like it's all changed in a week, right? Because that Leeds Everton fixture looks much better now as well.
Exactly.
And it's neat, like Rodrigo's at like a beautiful price point at 7.4. It's unfortunate that, I mean, it makes sense calendar wise, but it's unfortunate that none of those teams play on the Sunday, so that you could gain the extra fixture and then gain the extra fixture, and then you've got your captain lined up there. So And you got Paulinho, so if you really didn't want to make a move and not lose somebody that is yet to play, is there any harm in him? He looks like he's going to pick up tackling bonus very, very frequently. Outside chance of getting a goal. We said this before, like you can't predict Koulibaly to score every time he plays for Chelsea, right? So if you take that aside, what's the ceiling for a Chelsea defender then without the attacking threat? 10 points. Paulinho has been picking up tackling at regular intervals recently, so if he's 4 or 5 point captaincy, would that be suffice there? Knowing you're not using a transfer and you're not taking someone out that's yet to play that week. I think there's definitely an argument for it.
I think there is, and I'm definitely tempted. Like you say, looking at the form of the teams, Fulham are in form and they're playing well. Brighton are in form and playing well, but which hopefully means that they're going to get forward a lot. And as you say, the midfielders hopefully checking a few tackles. So even if you get a 4 or 5 pointer to save a transfer, even if Zaha or Rodrigo did get their goal, and you get your 18 points off them or wherever it is, but you get 10 off Paulinho. Because you're going to likely want to move on Zaha or Rodrigo at some point, aren't you? So
yeah, and you're taking, unless the player's injured, you're taking out someone that's yet to play as well. So you're gaining, whilst you're doubling up that player, you're losing one fixture of the person that you're taking out.
Indeed, I like that. Wednesday 31st, Bournemouth Wolves, Man City Forest. It's an interesting day. Arsenal against Villa, West Ham and Spurs. What a day that is for fantasy football. You've got Man City, Arsenal, Spurs, and Liverpool all playing on the same night. That probably accounts for like 9/11 of most people's fantasy team at the moment, doesn't it? It's going to be absolutely incredible day. What's your thinking on captaincy?
If everybody plays, I think Haaland's a standout captain. Just based on how Newcastle's been playing recently, I think Newcastle's been excellent. Otherwise, I would always pick Salah because because of the extra points for the goals, I think. But yeah, I think Haaland, based on the fixture, would be my choice if everyone starts.
Arsenal against Villa is a tough one because Arsenal have looked good and Villa have looked bloody awful as well. So Jesus could be a good option there. Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of points scored that night. And the captaincy, hopefully the captaincy won't be too detrimental if you get it wrong because there's so many players playing that night. And then this is
go
on, sorry.
And there's a good chance that you'll likely own the high scoring, a high scoring player.
And mind you say that it's tough because you can't have Haaland, Salah, and Kane. Yeah. So you can, but a lot of teams haven't. So it's tough there. Thursday, the 1st September is a really interesting one. Leicester, Man United. There's not many of those players in anyone's teams at the moment. I think if I was to pick a player who I really fancy for that day, it's probably Maddison, with the form that Leicester and Man United are both in and the form that Maddison is in. He looks to be just the main man at the moment.
And interestingly enough, that's the first day after the transfer window closes, I think, or assuming that it runs to the 31st of August.
Yeah,
I could be wrong. That game's after the transfer window shuts, so that all the unrest about players coming in, like teams coming in for players, should be done and dusted. I just want to double check that. I'll double check that while we're on.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Looking at Leicester players, so Leicester do have a 3-1 over Arsenal. On that day, Arsenal's game is away to Man United on Sunday the 4th, which, it depends how you look at it, I suppose. It could be a tough game, but it could be an easy game. Jesus, you're probably not going to would you actually captain Jesus? I'm not sure, actually. But Jesus is roughly the same price as Maddison, so you could do like a 3-1 there. If Fofana is still there at Leicester, which I doubt, but you never know, you could do Saliba to Fofana for a 3-1 there. I'm sure there's a couple of other 3-1s as well, but they're the ones that stick out. They've also got 3-1s over Newcastle and Forest, but they play at home, and also over Leeds as well. So it's some interesting fixtures there. But what's your thinking currently on that day?
at present skip, but Leicester could, because Leicester play then, and then 2 weeks later they play on the first game. You could go for a 3-for-1 over someone. So yeah, I'll have a look into it more, and especially if a player got injured, then maybe I move the injured player on to Maddison and then potentially move back to someone else. The transfer window that shuts that night. So
on the 1st or the 31st?
On the first.
Oh,
wow. So there could
Let's
be
hope Maddison
some
doesn't get sold.
Yeah.
Just interestingly, just to add on Leicester, and this is thinking probably a bit too far ahead after the international break, but you could potentially, if you wanted to, hold on to your Leicester player. Monday, the 3rd of October, Leicester play Forest in a single game day. So if you did go for Maddison, for example, you get a nice 3-for-1, United, Brighton, and then home to Villa. Then they do play Spurs just for the international break, but first weekend back after the break, they do have a single game day. So obviously, you're hoping there that Maddison stays fit, and if it is sorry, I'm saying Maddison, whoever anyone picks for that day. But yeah, there is an option for keeping for that game day as well. I'm tempted by Maddison. I'm not sure how I'm going to get there yet, but I like him as a pick regardless. Good fixtures, 2 captaincies. If I take all that into account, I kind of like that, I think. Okay, we've had masses of questions as usual. Thank you so much. We're not going to be able to get through them all. I think we've obviously answered a lot of them, but let's go through some of them. Interesting one to start off with, Tom Hartnell. He's had a terrible start so far. He says, I'm okay. This sort of thing doesn't affect me, but I'm struggling to see where I can make gains. He says, am I just being a negative Nancy? Well, what's your thinking, Paul, on a poor start so far?
There's a couple of experienced Sky managers I've seen have like really slow starts last year, and transfer preservation and picking up players. Like we just talked about that Tuesday the 30th, like so a week tomorrow. Crystal Palace, Brentford, Fulham, Brighton, Southampton, Chelsea, Leeds, Everton. There's no standard captaincy there, so you could pick you could pick Zaha, who'd be lowly owned. You could pick Mitrovic, who'd be lowly owned. You could pick Mount, who'll be lowly owned. Rodrigo, Harrison. There's so many players there that you could take a punt on, even if it doesn't pay off. It's probably not going to cost you because of there not being a standout captaincy option. So there's definitely opportunities coming up where you can make the most of that. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Grounds can get made up quite easily in the coming weeks. Just have a loose plan. Be quite fluid with it. If you're making moves, don't think of that move in isolation. Think of the structure of your team and where you want to get to with your team as well. And there'll be opportunities like this will come up.
Just one worry, 20, 30 points at the moment is like tens of thousands of rank places, isn't it? So I just wouldn't worry, Tom. It's way too early. We haven't even finished game week 3 yet, so there's loads of time to go. I just wouldn't be worried.
I sat in the top 100 last season for about half the season, and Ian Parran was quite a bit behind me at one point, and he beat me just by taking it slowly, playing his own game, preserving, and then making educated moves towards the end of the season to capitalise on certain days where there wasn't a standout captaincy, or perhaps you held like a Conor Gallagher for so long so that Crystal Palace played that game day. But I think it was Zaha. It was Crystal Palace against, I can't remember, Leeds, I think it was, and he brought in Zaha and performed there. So there'll be plenty of opportunities to make that up.
Yeah, I just wouldn't worry. And people are rifling through transfers, right? So think as well, I haven't got the numbers to hand, but our YouTube watches are up, right? So a couple of seasons ago when we started, we used to get a few hundred watches just for example, so that we weren't kind of massively sort of out there selling the message to lots of people. but for now it goes out to thousands as well. But the problem is, no, the positive thing is people are watching this and listening to this. We're taking the advice on board on players, but they will still be rifling through transfers. So the rank is just not reflective. So I'm doing okay in Sky, but I'm doing awful in the other games. Absolutely awful in Telegraph, Dream Team, and FPL. But I'm just not concerned because I just know people are just using transfers. They're not thinking ahead, and they're just going for kind of short-term points all the time. So your experience, Tom, and your class as a Sky manager will come through for sure.
And if you want to hear more about Fergie's demise in other fantasy football formats, tune into the Nip and a Half podcast where we'll be discussing it.
My demise, flipping out is a strong word. Ollie Paul, are we any close to working out the best cheap midfielders? He says Palhinha and Kamara or Casado. I think you're pretty much thinking on those lines, you Paul.
I think let's see how Gibbs White does it. Forest as well. So a lot of money to pay for somebody that wouldn't be playing the majority of their games for a club like Forest as well. So
what we'll do next week is we're going to do a bit of a data review of the first 4 game weeks, I think, which will really, really help in terms of, after 4 games, you get a bit of an idea of what's going on, don't you? So, we'll do a bit around, best bonus players, best whatever, best whatever players, and what we think the template is, will be good going forward. We'll kind of look at that next week because there's no game next Monday either. Pete, we mentioned about Ake. Ron says, what should Fofana owners do? I think you've got to hold. You may miss like one more game, maybe 2, but at his price, if he goes to Chelsea, which is looking very likely, and he starts, which they're not going to pay 85 million for a defender not start him, he's going to be. It basically makes it like a 10-man game, in my opinion. What do you think, Paul? Or do you think you should get rid, but then get back in a few weeks? I would keep.
I don't know. I don't think it's I don't think it's as clean cut for me. I think that I would probably get rid. And if he did move to Chelsea, start getting his game, I think maybe on like Sunday the 4th of September when they play on match day 2 of that week, and you see their lineup, then maybe move somebody else onto him. I think if you don't have Saliba. If you don't have Saliba and you've got Fofana, I think I would just make that straight move.
I think I'm going to beat you this year, Paul. Auto close. Should I avoid bringing anyone in for tonight's game? If you haven't got anyone for tonight's game, I would. Well, I'd be on Salah. Scored a hat trick here last year. United absolute shambles. Last game lost to Brentford 4-0. Okay, Liverpool haven't exactly been on fire, but.
Bournemouth and Newcastle at home next 2 games. Where he'll probably be the most captain player, I would have guessed. Just
get it done. Don't mess around would be advice. Nobody's asked about Haaland. We've mentioned that one. Aman asks around, should we go after Mitrovic? Interesting one there. I really like Mitrovic. Just the price, you're kind of going against Saliba and the budget mids, aren't you? But I really like Mitrovic. I think he could be a really good option.
Yeah. He's done well in tough fixtures, as in like he scored a double against Liverpool. Yeah. If you were a fixtures person, though, they play Arsenal away, Brighton at home, not an easy game, Spurs away, Chelsea at home. I don't think his fixtures are great.
Okay.
I would consider getting him further down the line if I was going to get him, I think.
Glenroy says, I tagged the wrong Paul on Twitter this morning. I don't know if you noticed, Paul. I tagged the wrong Paul. He said, go on.
Have you seen that person's last tweet is about trying to flog the dodgy Ray-Bans as well? But the fishing scam.
Ollie also asks, if you don't have an Arsenal defender, would you go for Saliba or would the standout? Is he the standout pick, or would you go for Zinchenko?
I just think he's nailed on there.
It looks like, doesn't it?
Even when Tomiyasu's fit, I genuinely don't know what to do. I think Tomiyasu is a good defender when they're fit, and maybe against when Arsenal's fixtures starting to toughen up a little bit, maybe they'll rethink about what they're doing, because I think Ben White could get caught out playing right back. And does he move back in the middle, or I just think they would stick with Saliba and Gabriel regardless of White or not. So yeah, I would get Saliba, and if I didn't already have him. If you didn't want to do it against Fulham because you wanted to get the fixture gain, then maybe wait until the Wednesday night against Villa and perhaps gaining an extra fixture and doing the move then.
Reasons unknown says that White go for a second Arsenal player because they're playing so well, or kind of hold transfers back for captaincy. Hold back, I think personally. Saliba and Jesus are pretty good options at the moment. He has got Ramsdale as captaincy option. You're thinking on Saliba and Jesus. I do think the home games they've got up and coming. I know they're home to Fulham and home to Villa, like in the next few games, and Jesus could have a party, couldn't he?
Yeah. I think I would try and get him in as well. I'm not encouraging people to blow loads of transfers. I know I'm saying I'm just giving the options of when I think, if you were making a transfers, when would be the best time to make them. Because I agree, I wouldn't make all of these moves because I wouldn't want to use all my transfers. But if you were looking for the best time to bring in an Arsenal player again next Wednesday, similar to the answer to the question before, because you get the fixture gain off coming off someone. So perhaps the Chelsea defender that you've held and captain against Southampton, and Chelsea still don't look at the races defensive wise, and you want to make the move, then that would be the time to move on to the Arsenal player if that's what you thought.
Yeah, I think as well. I'd definitely go for Jesus over Saliba for that captaincy option as well, because you're probably never going to captain Saliba, especially if you've got Ramsdale. So I think I'd go for players like Jesus and Salah. I think you've got to have them. You've got to have them in Sky. I just think they're too. They can just go off. They can have quiet games, but then they can just go right off. Like in the Kane, Salah, Jesus this season, maybe even Haaland, that mould, they can go right off and score 20 points. And especially as a captain, is it's hard to peg back in 1 week. Ian asks around, assuming it's Sky overhaul week, how many different players to your current teams are getting picked? So you said you're pretty close now, Paul. Is that right?
Yeah, but only because I made moves at the weekend to get towards that. Otherwise, I'd have been 4 and now I'm 2.
I haven't got my team in front of me, but I think I'm pretty content. I think probably maybe 4 moves to get a couple of enablers in, to maybe get a Maddison and maybe Haaland. Kane. I'm not sure, but I think overall I'm pretty okay at the moment. Those fixtures, those Spurs fixtures with having Romero and Dyer for those 4 coming up are not the best, but I can take a few of those at the time. Dan Cox says, Fergie, do you think Fred plays more than 45 or 53 minutes tonight? It might smash a goal in. Might, mate. He's a big game player. I'm hoping. I'm guessing he starts. Mind you, I wonder what will happen when Casemiro plays. Apparently, Brazil's record when Casemiro and Fred play together is fantastic. So I'm wondering whether they'll put those 2 together in the team. But yeah, I think we're struggling here. Oh, we've got to our punt last week, Paul. We've got to our punt for the game week, didn't we?
Under 1%. Is that what I'm looking for?
I'm gonna have to have a look for next week. For this week, I haven't looked yet. Ben says, I have a couple of fires to put on my team and appreciate you guys' thoughts. He's got Ake, Gibbs, White, Koulibaly, Bowen, and Diaz, who all feel risky picks. I don't think Gibbs, White, Koulibaly, and Diaz are risky picks, especially now Ake's got an injury. Especially now Ake's got an injury. I think they'll all be all right. Bowen and Ake could be a bit thing. He says I'll do Bowen to Maddison. Ake maybe down to one of the cheap enabling midfielders or Saliba if you don't have them, I think would be my advice. Paul, anything to add?
Have a look at upcoming captaincy, so maybe even move into Rodrigo if you wanted a captaincy for that Tuesday night.
Zaha maybe.
But yeah, But yeah, out of those, Ake would be the only one, if he was confirmed out of it, that I think I would move on.
We've answered Graham's question about Palhinha for the captaincy. We've talked about Romero. We've answered most of these questions now. Let's have a quick look. If we've got anything. Luke Notley asks around a mini overhaul. 3 to 4 transfers are kind of, re-engineer the team for the next couple of months. I know you're not adverse to that, are you, Paul?
If it's going to get you closer to the team that you want, but yeah, just make sure that you're not then planning 2 or 3 transfers further down the line, like you're doing that with that in mind, and always trying to make small gains as a player that you're taking out, play on the first game of the game week, and the player that you're coming in. How can you best utilize transfers to, like, if you're doing 3 or 4 transfers, how can you best utilize it to get the maximum games out of the players that are coming out?
Yeah. Julian and Steve ask about big at the back. So my second team is called Big at the Back, and it's not doing very well at the moment. I do have 4 Liverpool defenders playing this evening in that team, so potentially I could claw some back if they do keep a clean sheet. But yeah, Big at the Back, not really doing it at the moment. What's your thoughts on holding, Paul, or with Wolves and Palace and people like Romero, Dyer, Saliba? What's your kind of general thoughts moving forward?
I think it will come back around, and Big at Back will be fashion. Big at Back will be the fashion again. Like, if we're saying just now, how many points difference would you guess there'll be between Salah and Van Dijk at season end? Not that. I doubt there'll be that much between them.
Yeah.
It's just how quickly they turn it around. If Liverpool kept a clean sheet tonight, say it finished 0-0 or 1-0 to Liverpool or something like that, I think that mentality, and then they kept a clean sheet against Bournemouth, I think that mentality kind of changes. Like, it's still too small a sample size that you're not taking into consideration that the randomness in there as well.
Cool. We've answered all of Steve1986's questions. Michael Harlan says, on a scale of 1 to 10, sat on 229 points with 49 transfers and Robbo and Van Dijk tonight, what would you rate it as? I think that's a pretty decent position. I'd rate that as a
7.5.
Yeah, so I was going to say 7 to 8. And Todd's last question: what do you guys prefer, strikers like Tony Wilson, Mitrovic, or the midfielders who tick over like Rodri? Now, there is like a 1.5 million between Rodri and those players. What's your thinking there, Paul? I like those strikers.
Yeah, I don't.
I think the thing is,
I don't think that there's nobody really standing out at the 8 million midfield bracket that I really, really want. I think Harrison's had a really good start to the season, and he could continue to do well. But when those players come up that get the passing and tackle bonus and around that price, like if Rodri was a little bit cheaper, then I would I favour that consistency over the splurts of 2 goals. And
it does feel like at the moment that Tony Wilson, Mitrovic, it feels like they're scoring every week, doesn't it? It feels like that. They're obviously not scoring every week, but it feels like they are. Whereas Rodri is getting 5 points every week and will score the odd goal and get the odd assist as well, and get multiple bonus at times as well, won't he? So, but Rodri is probably a bad example there to compare, because he is at least 1 million more than those guys, 1.5 million more. But thanks for that, Paul. Tom says Martinelli, who is a really good shout to that. 8 million range, absolutely on fire at the moment. I can't see him losing his place soon. Good stuff. So we have the match on this evening. I'm very excited. I think it's going to be a really good match. As usual, thank you all so much for watching and listening. Your continued support is much appreciated. Thanks for everyone in the chat. Massive crowd, usual. Hope we've been of some use and some help. Thank you, Paul. Where can people find you?
On Twitter at Paul McAnulty 1 Fergi.
1.
Paul McAnulty 1.
Make sure you get that 1 on the end, otherwise that guy notifications, he's probably wondering what's going on. It's,
so it's MCANULTY surname.
Good stuff. We are recording Nip and a Half straight after this, which will be uploaded this evening too. My Twitter handle is at FFH_Fergi. Make sure you drop us both a follow. We got a last couple of questions. Tom says, I questioned Rodri's minutes with Calvin Phillips, so I haven't gone for him. And Glenn, he said, Johnson to Rodrigo. He says, can I sneak this in? Johnson to Rodrigo, Paul, what do you think? On Tuesday, I'm assuming he means.
Yeah, I think I like the move. If you don't have a captain already for Tuesday, I think that's a solid move.
Good stuff. Thank you, everyone in the chat. If you liked what you watched, please press the like button. We've only got 24 likes. We've had like 125 people watching the whole way through. Only 25 likes. Please press the like button. Come on. Remember to subscribe in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen and your watch, please rate the podcast. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, anything like that, just give us 30 seconds of your time. Drop us 5 stars and a rating. It would be much, much appreciated. It really, really does help us. We'll be back next Monday reviewing the weekend's action and looking ahead to the remainder of Sky Game Week 4 and Sky Game Week 5. We're going to have a bit of a data dive, a bit of 4 weeks worth of data. What is the season telling us so far, and how do we move forward? Have a great week all, and goodbye for now.